2023 was actually a really good year for movies. I went into the year with a decent amount of movies I wanted to watch, and I even ended up seeing a few extra in theaters. I normally see around 5 to 10 a year, but I wound up going to 17 this year. There were definitely some stinkers, but significantly more of the movies I saw were pretty good. Welcome to Next Topic Media. I'm Peach, or Caleb Ladd for those who haven't watched the Peach Crisp show, and today I'm going to rank all 16 movies I saw in 2023. You might have noticed that just a second ago I said I saw 17 movies in theaters, but I saw the Demon Slayer movie, which wasn't really a movie, it was just 3 episodes of the TV show combined together, so I'm not going to put that on this list. With that bit of housekeeping out of the way, let's get straight into number 16, Cocaine Bear. My roommates loved this movie. I did not. Weird, offbeat horror comedies are not my thing at all, but for a movie like that, this one wasn't terrible. It had some pretty good character moments in it, but it was just annoying that there were so many moments where they could have just killed the bear, but didn't. Like, I get it, they want to let the bear live because it's wrong to kill animals in the park, but the thing is murdering hordes of people. I feel like ending multiple lives is merit enough to just kill the bear. It also wasn't funny, and it just left me feeling bad by the end of the movie. I liked the stuff with the mom and the kids though, that was pretty sweet. This wasn't the only bad comedy I saw this year though. Coming in at number 15 is No Hard Feelings. This was the only straight up comedy movie I saw this year, and it was just not it. It wasn't good. I get comedy is subjective, and my roommates found it pretty funny, but the jokes were just so low bar and they didn't work that well. The premise was stupid, which could have been a good thing, but it wasn't executed well. The one redeeming thing about this movie that pulled it out of last place was the main character's co-worker. He was easily the funniest character in the movie. If you're a big fan of comedies, don't let me dissuade you from watching this because you'd probably like it. I just prefer other genres. This one's not much of a surprise because I'm not a Transformers fan, but number 14 is Transformers Rise of the Beasts. It was just kind of mid all the way through, but the final fight was hilariously bad. Like, you're seriously trying to tell me that none of the Transformers can beat the villain, but as soon as this guy puts on a special suit, it's just game over? Like they win? Nah. Also, Scourge is such a dumb villain name, and they say it so many times in the movie. Nothing made sense in the final act. Me and Caleb were laughing at the nonsense that was happening, but it was definitely not meant to be funny, and that's another thing. The movie did try to be funny, but I only laughed at the things that weren't supposed to make me laugh.
And the Oscar goes to Leonardo DiCaprio.
Getting to the positive side of the Peach Crisp scale is my number 13, Killers of the Flower Moon. I didn't really know anything about this movie going into it besides the runtime, which was 3.5 hours. And I was skeptical, but I was hopeful of it because I've seen a lot of very good, very long movies. And unfortunately, this one did suffer from that crazy long runtime because the story it was telling, however good it might be, did not need to be drawn out into 3.5 hours. I think it could have been told much better in 2 to 2.5 hours, but that might just be me. If you like history movies, definitely check this one out. You will probably love it. But for me personally, it just made me like a different history movie that came out earlier this year a lot more, and we will get to that one later. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem was definitely a movie that came out this year, and it was definitely a movie that I saw in theaters. I don't really have much to say about it. It was just kind of fine. Don't have any strong opinions on it. I do think it was kind of funny. The relationship between the turtles was kind of getting on my nerves. They were just at each other's throats too much of the movie. I am looking forward to the sequel because they tease Shredder at the end of it, and Shredder is a lot cooler than Superfly. No offense, Superfly.
Reality is often disappointing.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Where do I begin? This movie was so disappointing. I love the first 2 Ant-Man movies. I think they're hilarious, but this one was just such a letdown, and it wasn't even a bad movie. It was just so much worse than the first two. I was coping pretty hard when it came out because I wanted to like it, and when we made the Peach Crisp on it, I gave it a pretty high score, but after looking back on it, it's just not that good. I don't really know what I saw in it. It's just boring. The stakes aren't there, and it's supposed to be the main villain of this phase of the MCU, and the stakes are just non-existent. So yeah, that's cool. The final battle was pretty fun to watch. I like seeing the ants take a pretty big role, and a lot of the stuff that was like kind of trippy in the quantum realm was like really cool to look at visually. Overall, it was just a really boring movie, and it wasn't that funny. But my biggest problem was with Cassie. I was so excited to see the dynamic between Scott, Cassie, and Hope, but she was just so mean to him for no reason. Why is she so mad that he is not constantly risking his life for the world? He's already saved the world a couple of times. Cut him some slack. It was just so annoying. Yeah, this movie was good, but it was very disappointing.
I'm just kidding. Anywhere else I'd be a 10.
On to the top 10, and then that 10th spot is Barbie. I went to go see this movie because obviously I did. It was Barbenheimer. I had to, but I actually was really excited to go see it. The trailers looked really funny. It looked like it was a goofy concept, and I was here for it. It did not disappoint. It was about as good as I thought it was going to be, and it was actually really funny, especially the I'm Just Ken song and number that they did. The fight on the beach is incredible when the Kens are just like attacking each other with their abs and stuff. I was laughing so hard at that. And then the little dance number they did afterwards was great too. If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. Just don't go into it expecting a masterpiece. It's just a fun, goofy movie. The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is the newest movie on this list. We just made a Peach Crisp on it a couple of weeks ago, so just go watch that video. I'm not going to go in depth here. I thought it was a really good movie. I do think that the third part was a little bit rushed and could have been made into its own movie, and I think the characters would have been much more well developed. Instead of the characters just out of nowhere deciding to become insanely evil or betray each other. The first few parts were insanely good, besides the water bottle scene in the second part. But if you like the Hunger Games movies, you'll like this one too, so go check it out.
Hey, that's pretty good.
The biggest surprise movie of the year for me was Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. My expectations were all over the place for this one because based off the trailers I thought it was going to be kind of mid, but then some friends told me it was good and reviews said it was spectacular, and I was kind of somewhere in the middle. I thought it was pretty great. I think it did some cool things with the D&D idea, like sometimes characters would be hidden although they were in plain sight, or they would just miss shots that they shouldn't have missed, which as somebody that has played D&D like 3 times, if you roll too low, you miss your shot. If you roll high enough, you could be hidden even though you shouldn't be. So that was really cool to see. If I was more on the D&D, I probably would have enjoyed this one a lot more, but a lot of the references just kind of flew over my head. But I feel like D&D fans were really happy overall with this movie. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I know it seems kinda low, but let me defend myself. Spoiler warning too, I'm gonna talk about the end of the movie. We did a Peach Crisp on it, and I think I gave it a 93, but over time, it's just gotten a little bit worse. Beyond the Spider-Verse is nowhere in sight, so this one ending with no resolution is really annoying, especially since I think the cliffhanger wasn't even that good. The spider people should have no problem saving Miles from the Prowler version of himself, and by far my least favorite thing was Gwen and Miles' relationship, because I love the way that Miles and Gwen and Peter B. Parker interact with each other in the first movie, but in this one, Miles and Gwen only have 1 or 2 good conversations before they're mad at each other, and then Miles and Peter B. Parker only have like 1 conversation. One thing that I did love about this movie though was everything with Gwen and her universe. It was perfect. The art style, the story, the conflict, the character development, it was all perfect. All that being said, the movie is great. I just don't think it was nearly as good as Into the Spider-Verse, but maybe when Beyond finally comes out, it'll tie everything up nicely. Just shy of the top 5 is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. I was so happy that this movie was actually great. It was fun, engaging, hilarious, a great length, and it had just the right amount of references and callbacks for me. It was a little bit on the nose sometimes with just like, oh, yeah, that's a reference to one of the old games. but I guess it really worked on me because I was pretty nostalgic the whole movie and I was just having a blast the whole time. And King Boo is in it, and he's my favorite Mario character, so obviously I had to love this movie. I'm really hoping that we get some significant news for the second movie sometime soon. Starting out my top 5 is one that probably no one is expecting, Scream 6. I'm not a huge fan of horror movies in general, but I do love the Scream franchise. I was a pretty big fan of Scream 5 last year, but this one was better in my opinion. The new setting was super cool and worked wonders for the story to make it feel refreshing and new. The Ghostface reveals weren't the most surprising, but I thought they worked well, and had some really intense scenes, especially the one with Gale versus Ghostface. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time because I didn't know if they were willing to kill her off or not. Also, not going to say who for spoiler reasons, but I'm happy that my favorite character of these new movies survived. This one's definitely a worthy contender for Best Scream, but I don't think it beats the original. Oppenheimer is a masterpiece. This is the long-form historical movie that Killers of the Flower Moon wanted to be. I was never bored throughout the 3-hour runtime, which is crazy because movies this long typically just feel bloated. And there was some stuff that could have been left out. There was a couple things that were very unnecessary in my opinion. The pacing, score, cinematography, sound design, direction, acting, and casting were all perfect. I loved Cillian Murphy's portrayal of Oppenheimer, and I don't think there's a single other actor who could have done a better job. If you somehow missed this one when it came out, you gotta go watch it. I'm telling you, it's worth it.
Somebody please get this man a gun.
Barely winning out over Oppenheimer for the third spot is John Wick Chapter 4. This movie was just so good all the way through. The action was the best of the series, the villain was super cool, the set design and cinematography was incredible, and even though it was nearly 3 hours long, I could have been convinced it was only 2 hours. It went by so fast. There was a really cool fight scene in the second movie that's one of the best action scenes I've ever seen, and I thought that there was no way they were going to be able to top it, and somehow they did. The top-down fight from this movie was just so cool. The finale was a hard pill to swallow, but I do like how it ended, especially the callback to something John Wick said earlier in the movie. If you haven't seen it and don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the movie. You're gonna like it. It's a lot of fun. Potentially, no, definitely the most biased pick on this list is my number 2, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Me and Chris made a video about this when it came out, so go check out that one. But long story short, I love Five Nights at Freddy's. I've been a fan ever since the first game. I've kept up with all the lore thanks to MatPat, and I was so excited to see this movie, and I honestly thought that it was never going to come out. But there was just so much to love and nothing to hate about this movie. Objectively, yes, Oppenheimer and John Wick are better movies than this, but I just loved the movie so much. It literally had MatPat in it. The only two things that I wish were in this movie that weren't were Markiplier, but he'll probably be in the second one, and Mangle. But Mangle will probably be in the second one too. I was very happy to see the movie succeed so well in the box office because a sequel is already being made. If you like FNAF, watch this movie.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
If you had told me that my number 1 movie of the year was going to be an MCU movie, I probably would have curb stomped you, but I would have to apologize afterwards because wow. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 exceeded every single one of my expectations. It's now my second favorite MCU film right under No Way Home. I don't really have the words to describe just how good this movie is, so I'm just going to highlight some of my favorite parts, and I am going to spoil a few things. I love that none of the main characters die, yet somehow the movie still made me cry like 4 or 5 times. I also loved Rocket's backstory and just how evil the High Evolutionary was. This was also one of the more funny MCU films while also being serious, and it never felt tone deaf. It's very emotional in the best way possible. I love this movie, and I guarantee you will too if you give it a chance. Just be prepared to cry. And that's all 16 movies that I saw in theaters this year. The average score of all of them was about a 74, which is actually really good. I'm making this video early in December, so I might end up seeing some of the later releases. I don't plan on it, but if I do end up seeing one, I will just make a short saying where I would put it on this list. Thank y'all so much for sticking around to the end. It's been really fun getting into editing towards the end of the year, and I look forward to making more videos in 2024. If you agreed or disagreed with my list, let me know in the comments below. And tell me your favorite movie of the year and why. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't yet. Peace.